We are the Ninja Legion, and this is Saving Throw. I'm Spider,
I'm D.
and today we're going to be talking about the latest Magic the Gathering expansion, Khans of Tarkir.
The Khans of Tarkir set is what's called a wedge set. It is each clan has its own 3-color designation. The 5 clans are Abzan, Jeskai, Sultai, Mardu, and Temur. Each of the different clans is radically different from each other. The Abzan clan, they are built on endurance and survival, and their associated colors are white, green, and black. And their ability on the cards is Outlast. And when you activate the Outlast ability, you put a 1/1 counter on the creature and tap it, but you can only activate it as a sorcery, which is kind of the problem with it, that it's so slow and grindy that it makes the playing those cards in the standard format much harder. The next clan, Jeskai, is America colors, red, white, and blue.
America.
And they deal with a lot of flowing movements, lots of tricks, and mostly just combat tricks. Their ability Prowess is whenever you cast a non-creature spell, the creature with Prowess gets +1/+1 until end of turn. There are 1 or 2 that get a special ability when you do so. The next one is Sultai. They are green, blue, and black. They revolve around milling yourself to death. Most of their cards put cards in your graveyard, and then they revolve around using your graveyard as a resource. With Delve, for each card you remove out of your graveyard and put into exile, you reduce the casting cost of the spell by 1 colorless mana. That's actually an ability that was made in Time Spiral, Future Sight, back in the day when it was created, and they decided to go ahead and pull it out of storage and put it into Khans.
They actually reprinted a card for that too. Wasn't Bitter Ordeal? Didn't that get reprinted?
I believe so.
Yeah.
No, I don't know if there were any reprints from.
I thought there was one. I thought there was
one
one card that they reprinted.
Yes, it was Bitter Ordeal. Yes.
Yeah, Bitter Ordeal.
Yeah. The next clan, Mardu, is white, red, and black. They are the aggro deck. They just love to put guys on the battlefield and turn them sideways and attack your opponent to death. Their ability is Raid, and it's whenever you would attack with a creature this turn, do something. One is whenever you attack with a creature this turn, if the creature enters the battlefield, you get a copy of the creature. One is you get to do 2 damage. One is you get to make a 1/1 warrior token. So they're all about just putting guys on the field and attacking with them. And the final clan is Temur. They are red, green, and blue. They're all about... their ability is Ferocious. They're all about big creatures. The Ferocious ability is if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, you get some additional effect. But a lot of their stuff is just big fatties. They want to play big creatures for cheap, and they do have a little bit of a control aspect because they do have the blue in them. There are a couple counter spells in Temur that are rather unique. One is kind of like a Mana Tithe. You counter target non-creature spell unless they pay 1. But if you do have the 4 power or greater on the field, it's just straight up counter target spell. So there is that. The pre-release for Khans was really exciting, actually. The set itself, they learned from their mistakes in shards of an Alara block. Alara block was the first wedge set that they did, and there was a lot of issues with the mana fixing for Alara block, and they learned their lesson. In this set, they put the wedge lands like they did in Alara block, so they tap for one of the 3 colors of the clans, and then they put in 10 dual lands that are each of the different color pairings.
That they function just like the land, the refuges from Zendikar.
Yes, yeah. They gain when they enter the battlefield. They come
in tapped, and they gain you a life.
Right. So that adds to for the limited formats. So sealed and draft, they added those to alleviate the mana fixing, because there were a lot of problems during Alara block where there wasn't enough mana fixing to alleviate the problem.
Yeah, and then at the rare level, you also have the fetch lands. They reprinted the Onslaught fetch lands for this set to help the mana fixing issue there. There are the banners, which function like the obelisks from Alara block, where they provide one of each color mana.
Right,
Correct?
but you can also pay one of each color mana of the clan, tap, and sacrifice the banner to draw a card. So it functions kind of like the clue stones from Return to Ravnica block.
Okay.
The issue with the fetch lands now, at least in the standard format, is that you can only fetch basics with them. There are no
Duels.
There are no duels to fetch. And so, more or less, a lot of people suspect they reprinted them just for the modern, because the Zendikar fetch lands were starting to approach, $80, $100, and they wanted to probably bring those down so people could get easier access to modern. Excuse me. And so they reprinted them. I like the art. A lot of people don't. I think I like the new fetch lands. I am glad they reprinted them, though. It's been way too long since they've printed those.
It's been 12, 13 years, something like that.
Yeah, because I started playing Onslaught when I was 12.
Yeah,
So,
Onslaught block was when I was in high school. So
yeah,
showing my age.
Yeah, really. So yeah, no, they reprinted those, and that was and people might look at it and go, oh man, they printed 25 lands. It's like, yeah, that's actually kind of good. Despite them being commons and uncommons and the rares, are it's good. I like it.
Now, is this block a traditional large, small, small setup?
No. This is like Zendikar block. This is a large, small, large. What they're doing, from what they've at least put out there, there are still rumors abound, but they haven't really put a lot of the information for the storyline and how that sets up the set, how that sets up the block. But Khans is essentially what happened when the dragons of Tarkir were completely wiped out, and the clans themselves worked together initially to take out the dragons, and now they're warring amongst themselves. And Sarkin Vol, one of the primary planeswalkers of Magic, decided to go back to his home plane of Tarkir and try and return the dragons from being extinct. The next set that's coming out is supposed to be the transition phase, where Sarkin is able to revive one of the primary dragon heads and use them to start the war again with the clans. And the final set is supposed to be the dragons having defeated the clans and returned to power. So
Okay.
that they're revolving it around time travel-ish kind of stuff. But I think it's good. And then what's going to happen is, when you have the new block rotation that's coming up in, is it September of next year, I believe?
Yeah.
No, it's February of 2016 is going to be the new set of the block rotation. What's going to happen is that when Khans would normally rotate out, it's Khans and the next set that will rotate only.
And they're going to leave that final set in?
They're going to leave the third set with the last M set, the last core set, because they're also doing away with the core set.
Okay, so it's because they're rotating two sets at a time.
Right. They're going to a two set block
system,
and they're going to have 3 active blocks versus 2 active blocks with 2 core sets. And they're changing that because they've been having trouble trying to come up with story for the third set. And despite them not really putting out books or comics or anything really that's anything relevant to story, they do try and put up like little articles and short little ditties about the plane themselves. But
yeah, I don't know about for Theros block, but I know for Ravnica they did the digital only books. Did they do any kind of book for Theros?
I don't believe so. Not that I remember.
And if memory serves correctly, I don't think they're doing the Magic the Gathering comic books anymore either.
No, they stopped
those,
that.
Those
stopped
weren't
that
selling well enough.
No, so there's the story is more just ancillary now. That they just sort of put it aside, and they're like, okay, well, it exists, and that's the reason we have these blocks, but there's really no rhyme or reason as to why it's there.
Well, I guess before we get too off topic with this, the only other question that I have, I guess, with this is, with the third set being a large set again, is it going to be like Rise of Eldrazi, where it's drafted and done everything solo, or are you going to draft that with Khans and then the middle set?
No, how it's going to be drafted is currently it is just Khans. When the second set comes out, it will, and they have the designation. They were Huey, Dewey, and Louie were the 3 different names, and so you have Khans. It'll be Khans, Dewey, the second set, and then when the third set comes in, it will be Dewey, Louie. They're going to actually push Khans out because Khans. The Khans
so
of
it's going to
Tarkir-
be the middle set and the third set, not the first without the first.
Right.
Set there.
The first set will be gone because that timeline will have been eliminated.
Okay.
And so they're going to have the still continuing battle between the dragons and the clans as one pack, and then they will have the new timeline, the dragons having retaken power, as 2 packs in the draft setup.
Well, the reason that I asked these questions about the third set is with them having all of that mana fixing built into Khans, that middle set's going to be this weird transitional where it's going to have the multicolor stuff to tie into the clans, but it's not going to have all that extra color support. Is the third set then going to not have the color support, and then you might have to struggle with that a little bit?
Because they've said, and they've already put this out there, that they're not having the third set be a wedge set. The third set is going to be either a dual or a single color set where each of the dragons represents 1 or maybe 2 colors. And so what's going to happen is you're not going to need the color fixing from Khans because you're not going to have to rely on a 3-color set to build around.
But that makes for interesting design challenges, I guess, for the small set that comes in between them, because it's going to have to be able to work with all the multicolor stuff for Khans, and simultaneously be able to work with the single or dual color stuff in the third set.
But it's because they haven't really put out there how that's all going to work, that there is the possibility that they have said that the clans work together, so they may not have become entirely individualized during the war with the dragons. They may have some of their own stuff, so there may be 1 or 2 cards that are associated with each specific clan, but it's probably going to be more
dual colors
or even
stuff.
Single color overlap, colors that thmatch things, and because they're adding new abilities each set now, so they're not going to have. You're not going to have Outlast. You're not going to have Prowess. You're not going to have any of those.
And Morph. Morph will probably be the one thing that sticks through.
Morph
through all
will
of
stay
them.
through. Morph is the only ability that is
not tied to a specific clan.
Correct, and that's actually an ability that was reprinted. That was printed in Onslaught, so it's a callback to that set. That you get to play a creature face down for 3 mana, 3 colorless, and it's a 2/2 generic colorless creature. It has no abilities, no effects. It has no creature type. And then you can pay its morph cost on the card to flip it face up, and you get some effect out of it. Most of the time, there are cards that just have no effect, but it's more of a combat trick because morph is unique in that it doesn't use the stack, and so you cannot respond to using morph in any way. You can there were cards back in Time Spiral that had what's called Split Second, and Split Second is you can't respond to it. You can't do anything in response to it.
The
2 exceptions being land,
tapping for mana,
or morph. Those were the only 2 things that you could do in response to a Split Second, and that's what morph is unique, and so far it hasn't caused any problems, which is kind of odd because because it being such a unique mechanic and because it doesn't use the stack, people would get I could see them getting confused as to I'm going to go ahead and morph this creature up, and like, well, I'm going to go ahead and respond and try and kill it. And it's like, well, you can't. It just doesn't work that way. You have to wait until the card's flipped up before you can do anything, and the ability has to go on the stack if it has any. But so I'm actually kind of glad there hasn't been any confusion. Even at the pre-release and the release tournaments, there have maybe been 1 or 2 questions, and they weren't really that complicated.
Okay, cool.
So it's actually been very nice to not have to deal with any of that.
Sweet. I guess so. Going back to the pre-release experience that you had.
Yes.
Sorry to get us off topic a little bit there, but I was curious about block structure.
No, it's actually
because it's important for the how it plays out through limited and mostly just for limited. But.
Right. Yeah. Because standard will be affected with the block rotations when they start the new stuff, but that's a year
way
down the road.
Line, yeah. Limited it's going to have more of an impact on limited than it will in constructed.
And limited, I played in a 2-edit giant pre-release, which is the first time I've ever done that, and that was really fun. And then I played in 2 individual pre-releases, and I was rather lucky in the sense that I went 11-0 between all 3 tournaments. That the clans themselves are in the 2-edit giant. That's a bit tougher to make a call on, but in the individual tournaments, Abzan, the junk or white, black, green colors, I completely dominated with Abzan. The Outlast ability, if you get enough relevant Outlast cards, can deal with every other deck type. The only one that can really do anything is Mardu, and they can outrace you, because they can put a lot of guys on the board and do a lot of things quickly. But if you get enough stuff down, they can't get through you.
Well, from what I saw from looking at the set, a lot of the creatures, or a lot of creatures that have that Outlast ability. There's a lot of other abilities that where each creature you have with a +1/+1 counter on it will get a certain ability.
Yes.
So there's an additional advantage just to being able to make your creature bigger. They're also gaining access to abilities from other cards for having those counters on them.
Right. Yeah. There's one that.
So
gives,
it's not strictly just I'm
just
a little
one
bit
counter.
bigger.
Right. Yeah. There's one that gives. There's First Strike, Death Touch, Lifelink, Flying, Trample, Reach.
All your main abilities.
Right. That fall under the green, white, and black categories.
Yeah.
There isn't one that gives them haste. There isn't one, it gives it flying. That's a white, that can fall under white. But,
and haste can technically fall under green.
Yeah, that's extreme technicality.
Yeah, pushing.
But yeah, no, the Abzan deck, again, during the pre-release, you get a seeded pack. So it's a pack of just cards that match the clan that you picked, and that gave access to a lot of the different Abzan cards to make a really powerful deck. And the only trouble that I had throughout the entire tournament was the last match against the other 4-0, the only other 4-0 in the tournament, and he was running a Mardu deck, which is the white, red, and black, and it's because he had the mythic rare flyer that whenever you attack, if you've attacked this turn, you get to put this 3/4 flyer on the board, and it makes a copy of a 3/4 flyer. And so it was like, okay, I have to have removal for 2 flyers because I have none of my own. Even though I had a reach card, it was still the fact that I had to draw it versus just dealing with 6 damage every turn.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was able to get through it. Luckily, that was I was able to get through that. But every other match that I faced against, I did Sultai, Teamer, I did another Mardu, and I did an Abzan deck, and it's just I played against all the different clans, and none of them seemed to have enough power to get through the color typing for the Abzan colors, because you get removal, you get big enough creatures, and you get the ability to make your guys really big in a standoff game where you're just sitting there and it's like, okay, I've got 5 creatures, you got 5 creatures, I'll tap 1, outlast it, make my guy bigger. Can you still get through without trading creatures? No? Okay, my guy, I take the advantage because my guy's now bigger than yours.
Yeah.
Draft is also a very unique thing, because you don't get the seeded pack and you're not getting 6 packs to draw on. Draft is land hoarding, actually. I have noticed that a lot of people will just draft lands. There have been times where I've seen people drafting 7, 8, 9 lands out of the packs. Okay. I've seen there was one player who drafted 9 banners and played 5 color.
Wow.
He went 4-1 with that deck. That was pretty scary.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So I find that it is I love the limited. I absolutely love the limited. I am an extreme limited player. I love this format. The like I said, the draft is difficult. Abzan isn't as extremely dominant. But I do find that of all of the different clans in limited, Sultai, the bug colors is the weakest. Just outright the weakest. There are a few choice cards that make it good, but you can play those in other colors, in other clans.
I guess the problem with that being that Delve is one of those really tricky mechanics where the cards are really expensive, but it's supposed to be balanced out by the fact that they have this Delve mechanic,
right,
where you can exile cards from your graveyard to reduce their cost.
Right.
The problem is you need to have cards in your graveyard for that to work.
But in limited, there is a lot more of that going on. There's a lot more of creature trading. There's a lot more of, if you're playing 15 creatures and 9 spells and then 16 lands, you're going to be able to get some creatures in your graveyard and spells in your graveyard. Even if you only reduce the cost of the card by 1 or 2, it's still enough to maybe get you over the hump of playing a large creature. In the pre-release, there's a 4/4 with Trample for 6 with Delve. I cast both of the ones in my hand for 2 mana because I dumped my entire graveyard out, because we had a large trade and I dumped my entire graveyard out, and I was like, here you go, here's 2 4/4s of Trample, deal with them. And,
I guess in that situation it's okay. I don't know, it just seems like one of those things that it's very conditional, and it can really hurt you.
There are choice cards, but they're also, in the limited format, there is very little recursion. There is 1 or 2 spells. I think there's a third that kind of counts, that allows you to pull stuff out of your graveyard and put it back in your hand. But other than that, there's really no recursion in limited.
So there's no incentive to keep anything in your graveyard anyway.
Exactly.
You can feel free to just get rid of all of it,
Exactly.
and it's not going to hurt you.
Right,
at all.
and there is one card that allows you to take 2 creatures out of your graveyard and put them in your hand, but that's not even that good.
Okay.
So I mean, it's decent. But you know, so actually, the standard format now is kind of following suit with the limited. Abzan is becoming one of the dominant color sets.
Well, Junk's always been a pretty strong color combination
Right.
when there's the right cards there
Yep.
to let it happen.
Yeah, they're playing mid range,
Okay.
which is aggro control mix, and
that's pretty normal for Junk anyway.
yeah, junk mid range is a common thing.
Yeah.
But the fact that they get a 4/5 for 4 mana with trample, that's a 6-point life swing that they can drop on turn 3, is just devastating. They get access to some of the best cards from cons. They don't really need any of the stuff from Theros. Actually, a lot of these decks are just running on cards just strictly from cons. There are very few Theros cards being played now.
Yeah, that was actually something I was going to ask. I'm like, how have the sets blended together, if at all? And
because Theros relied on devotion and things that were having so many colored permanents on the board, and cons being a wedge set, you're not going to have devotion when you're playing 3 colors. It's a bit difficult.
Yeah, because that's a big shift, because prior to cons coming out, wasn't it a very strong monocolor format?
Yes, it was an extreme monocolor format. They would be playing mono blue devotion, mono black devotion, mono green devotion, red green monsters, which was just essentially mono green with splash red. But yeah, no, it was a lot of monocolors, and now it's shifted to being a lot of tricolor. The junk colors, Abzan is pretty dominant. They play both mid range and Reanimator, because there is a card that was printed in the core set that allows you to put a creature from your graveyard on the battlefield for cheap enough.
Yeah.
And they also play with the one card I described, the 4/5 with trample and the 6-point life swing. They play that because there's a card from Theros that they play that allows you to sacrifice a creature and return that one and a creature out of your graveyard back to the battlefield. And so they return 2 copies of the same card and get 12 points out of it.
Okay.
And so they're playing Reanimator with that card. But then there's Jeskai. Jeskai's playing both mid-range, playing all 3 actually, playing control, mid-range, and aggro. The aggro isn't done well, but the burn, which is kind of a mid-range deck, has done rather well. It's taken first in a couple of tournaments. Okay. And it's the America colors, just for a reference again. But that's been doing fairly well because they have enough control cards. They do have enough burn spells now to actually get over the hump. And the fact that Mantis Rider is a thing, a 3/3 flying haste vigilance for 3 mana.
Wow, yeah, that sounds pretty strong.
It's Lightning Angel for 1 less, and you lose 1 power and 1 toughness. But a lot of people that I've talked to are willing to trade the 1 toughness and the 1 power for the 1 mana, because you can drop it on turn 3. And it just essentially it's a lightning bolt that they have to remove. And so it's not a 1 for 0, it's a 1 for 1, and if they don't remove it, you just keep hitting them in the face with it. Haven't really. Mardu is kind of sort of around. They're not really doing much. It's having trouble getting past the large creatures of Abzan and having trouble dealing with all of the consistent burn from Jeskai. Sultai I haven't seen much of, and Teamer's trying to find a home, and I don't know if it will, again, because I think there's just enough removal and stuff to fight against in the other 2 colors that it's going to be a little more difficult. The only deck that really is going to stick around that doesn't follow any one of the clans is Rabble Red. It is just a mono red deck that plays Goblin Rabble Master from M15, because that card is apparently insane and has become a legacy staple.
What is that one? I'm sorry. What does that one do again?
It's a 2 and a red for a 2/2 that at the beginning of your combat step you put a 1/1 goblin token with haste onto the battlefield. All of your goblins must attack each turn of Able, and or all other goblins must attack each turn of Able. Sorry, and whenever Rabble Master attacks, it gets +1/+0 for each other attacking goblin, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's like it's it has become
similar to like Goblin Pile Driver.
Goblin Pile Driver from also, yes, except that is actually taking the place of Goblin Pile Driver
because it also spits out goblins.
Right, and in Legacy you can drop it on turn 1 and
Yeah.
just start beating them in the face with Rabble Master. But
Yeah.
Rabble Red is a deck. I mean, that's how it's got its name because Rabble Master is such a powerful card. Initially, when it was put out, it was like a $1 or $2 rare, and then jumped up to $15. So it's because it's just an overly powerful card. But as a whole, I mean, I don't personally play Standard that much, but I keep up with it just to see what other people play. I like to, I like to know what's going on. I have a lot of friends that play Standard, so I like to see what they're doing, why they're playing certain colors. Some of them are just because I like the color set. Others are because this is actually a really good deck. But all the people that I've talked to, with the exception of 2, are playing either Abzan or Jeskai, and that's it. That's pretty much what's going to become the dominant meta as far as I can see. Okay. So. I think that about covers everything with cons. I don't really know if I have anything else to go over because I've covered the big major things: the limited format, pre-release, release, and standard. So,
yep. So I think that covers it. I can't think of any other questions I might have about it.
No.
So cool. Well, thanks for tuning in. Hopefully you found this informative, and it'll give you a better idea as to what you can find inside the Cons of Tarkir set and what you can expect going out to tournaments. Thanks for watching. We are the Ninja Legion once again. I'm Spider.
I'm D.
See you next time.